Welcome, everyone, to the HeroX Innovation Leadership Speaker Series. I'm Jamie Elliott, and I'm joined today by Blossom Johnston, who is the CEO of Idaho Partners for Good. Blossom, thank you so much for joining.
I'm so excited to be here, Jamie.
We're very excited to have you. Can you tell me a bit about your journey that has brought you to where you are now?
Oh my gosh. Actually, right before we came on, you were asking me where I was from originally. And I have to say, the journey for my life really did begin on Moku o Keawe, which most people know as the Big Island of Hawaii. I was raised by a full-blooded Kanaka Wahine, which is a Native Hawaiian woman, and a pure Irish father at one of 12. And so we learned at a very early age some very, very key things, values that pretty much orient all of us in the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Oh, absolutely. I think it has some relevance for what we're going to talk about today is this kuleana. It's a Hawaiian word that actually means that we have a responsibility for not just ourselves for showing up well, but for our families, our communities, and the earth, the environment. And so it's not about me. It's not about self. It's about where we fit in the larger ecosystem of family, community, and the world.
I have a similar outlook, but it came from a completely different place. So I find that very, very interesting. Can you tell me a bit about Idaho Partners for Good?
You bet. So we've been up and running officially for 5 years. I did a year's worth of research and due diligence before I ever started it to make sure it was something that people wanted. And we're going to go, yeah, this is something that's needed in Idaho. What it is a way for the philanthropic coin, which essentially means the people who give and the people who get, that they can accelerate the impact they have on both sides of that coin by the way they do their work. So our mantra is give better to get better. And that essentially means philanthropy has to stop using outdated, broken systems for their giving, and nonprofits have to stop using outdated, broken systems to respond to the donors and what their mission is.
Is forfeiting the use of outdated systems enough? Because what you mentioned was it's you're there to accelerate. You're there to accelerate getting to solutions or getting to betterment. Is Yeah, can you talk more about how you all do that?
Yeah, sure. So we educate philanthropists, donors, people who give. Typically, one of the first questions they ask of a nonprofit is, what's your overhead percentage? Actually, the cycle of what that has produced is a starvation in the nonprofit sector. And so we have to stop asking the wrong questions and we have to start asking the questions that actually will get the mission advanced. And those questions are really around, tell me about your mission. How are you impacting the community? How might I be involved? What does your operations look like? Who's leading this thing? And do they know what they're doing? So there's a lot of other questions that if I'm a informed philanthropist, I'm going to be asking those instead of going, well, what's your overhead? Because especially if I'm medical based or healthcare based, I need those doctors. I need those nurses and those professionals. And am I going to pay them even a living wage to work in a nonprofit? The dirty little secret for the nonprofit sector is that a lot of people who work in the nonprofit sector then go and get the handouts from other nonprofits because they're not paid hardly anything, especially in states like us.
When you say the handouts, you mean grants and things or other funding
No, I'm talking
opportunities?
about I'm talking about if I'm paid just what the standard is in the nonprofit sector here in Idaho, I can't afford to live in many of the areas because housing's too expensive. I may have to go to the food bank to go get food on a weekly basis. I may have to get subsidized childcare. I probably am on some kind of other public benefits because they are not seen as the safety net that is critical to the community.
Interesting. It's
Yeah.
similar to what we commonly know of teachers, right? We know that they are underpaid for the great good that they do. Like you said, the dirty little secret is not something I was familiar with in the nonprofit world. I understand where you're going.
But that is on the backs of government funders and private funders. They're not working and designing solutions with those that are on the front lines. They're just making stuff up as they go instead of truly understanding what's needed in that particular issue that they care about, because everybody cares about their special interests. So
Yeah.
how about you design those solutions for your giving with the end users, which are normally the nonprofits and their clients?
I think it's interesting because I feel like I see something similar in the open innovation world where
Yes.
we get to engage a new partner who wants to solve some big problem, right?
Right.
And when they are thinking in their head, what is this going to cost me?
Hmm.
It's all about in prize money, right? How much money am I giving away in prizes to solve this problem?
Right.
Not
Right.
about solving the problem as a whole and the cost of solving a problem. Now, can you talk about Idaho Partners for Good? What are those activities that you all do to make that a great experience and to help solve problems and accelerate things?
Okay. So in the last 5 years, we've helped over 180 nonprofits, not all in Idaho, but primarily in Idaho. And we'll do everything from they'll come to us and they're going, we just got the letter that our IRS tax exemption has been revoked. And so we help them figure out what to do. And oftentimes it's just the factor that they didn't know what they didn't know, and so they didn't file their 990 easy or their 990 form. And so we've got to help them get things up and running in a way that is sustainable. So we do everything. We like to start in two areas in particular, because if those two areas get dialed in, then the rest is cake. I mean, it's so
Okay.
much easier. But if we can get the leadership dialed in, especially the board of directors, which I would say somewhere roughly between 80 and 90% of all boards are a cluster, because they don't know their key fiduciary duties and their strategic duties. So if we can get them, if we can train, resource, and mentor, then those particular missions will be advanced through their leadership. There's also this tenuousness between the executive director, CEO, and the board. And we've got to manage those things better so that that board actually can function the way it's supposed to. The other area is their finances. We're still dealing with so many nonprofits that give us their bank statements. And that's the ascent. That's what they have. They have bank statements for their finances. There's no P&L, there's no budget, there's no QuickBooks. So
Yeah.
we're starting from scratch to try to level set for them, with them, and get them at least on QuickBooks so that they can operate in a way that won't get them into trouble with the IRS. But then we do everything from helping them figure out what to evaluate and how. We all the standard operating procedures, communication. So we're like full service, and most of what we do is pro bono.
Wow. And so how does a nonprofit know that they need the help of Partners for Good? How do they know when the right time is to engage you? And how are you kind of managing that ecosystem of nonprofits, both existing to help find you and any new nonprofits?
So we don't need any more nonprofits in Idaho. We have 10,500 of them. They need to stop setting up nonprofits unless it is truly a new niche or a new need. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. The second thing is every leader knows they have gaps. Nonprofit and for profit, we all know we have areas that we need help in. But because they're running so fast, we talk about the nonprofit sector having their hair on fire. That's no joke. They are just trying to deliver as much as possible to the end users, which is their clients: food, housing, childcare, whatever. And so they don't take time for personal or organizational development. So they might want to, but until we actually call time out and incentivize them, that's the piece that they really need. So I love Mackenzie Scott's big bets. because these groups don't know they're going to get it. And they get this ginormous sum of money that de risks innovation, which is exactly what we need in the nonprofit sector. We have to de risk innovation so that they can actually start solving some of these things. Most of our ecosystem leaders in the nonprofit sector, they know exactly what needs to be done. They don't have the resources.
You mentioned something interesting there, which is the professional development. It's not
Uh-huh.
something we often think about in the nonprofit world I mean, but folks need it in every job they go into, right? In
Yes.
every position is opportunity for self-betterment, to learn and to grow in the position that you're in. How does Idaho Partners for Good interact with organizations to establish those things?
We love to work with the board first because it's their responsibility, the care and feeding of the executive. But most nonprofit boards have no idea that they're not just supposed to evaluate the CEO, but they're actually supposed to mentor, resource, and support that person. I'm so fortunate that I have someone that I meet with weekly that just keeps pulling me up and just asking me those key strategic questions. I know I'm so fortunate and so blessed. Most don't have that. Most of our nonprofits, and I would dare say in other states, are small, have budgets less than 250,000 a year to do everything they're trying to do. And they don't think they have the resources. Well, guess what? This person is doing it pro bono as part of their investment in our mission.
So, Blossom, it sounds a lot, talk about professional development of employees and executive coaching, P&Ls. It sounds like you're saying nonprofits should be run more like businesses.
You think? So that is part and parcel of our mantra is there are things that are different about nonprofits, especially when it comes to IRS rules and some fiscal regulations. But for the most part, let's really up the game of the nonprofit. But we all know as entrepreneurs, which is part of what our DNA is, entrepreneurial mindsets. You have to deliver, but if you're not making profit, you have to stop and take a look at what you're doing so that you don't end up going under.
Okay. So, in a world where nonprofits are run more like an enterprise, how does competition play in?
I love that question. So, in states like Idaho, where there are fewer resources philanthropically, what we're really pushing for right now is this idea of ecosystem collaboration. So, let's just talk about one of the areas we're working in right now, which is housing. Idaho's one of those places that has gotten completely priced out of the market for middle income and Alice populations. And so we're working to put on what's called the transformational leadership cohort. It's 6 organizations, 3 leaders, the CEO, someone from the board, and an emerging leader. We put them together for 6 months. We put them together in a classroom for 5 hours first, and then we resource them with a coach to help them true up, define, design, something that they really need either professionally or organizationally. In that, we also give them time to take a look at, wow, could I form some kind of a strategic partnership here? Maybe we don't need 2 CEOs. Maybe we need one CEO and the other person who's really good at finances, they can be the CFO. And we merge our organizations. We have really got to start thinking about if we want to continue to serve in our communities, we might have to look at our business models. It could look like cooperatives. It could look like mergers. It could look like outsourcing back office. All of those things that are natural to the corporate scene are unnatural in the nonprofit scene.
Indeed, and it's a culture shift, right? Can you talk about any of the nonprofits that you've gotten to work with where you're truly impressed? One, you're impressed because they do take that approach. They have the entrepreneurial mindset and the business mindset already kind of locked in. And from the impact perspective, organizations that you've gotten to work with where you just really love what they're about and how they're going about it.
Sure, sure. So I'm going to give two. We just had an independent review of what we do because as a learning organization, we always want to make sure that what we're doing works. And if it doesn't work, let's stop doing it and do something else. So we did have an independent review recently. And what they came back with was, yes, our model, what we're doing works, but it works better when there's a few things in place. Readiness to benefit. So many nonprofit leaders are going to just open their arms and go, please help me. And many are going to go, no, this is mine. Don't look because I'm not sure it's good enough. So for those that go help, our first foray was a 3-year stint with the Boise Bicycle Project. Got in the trenches with them right at the beginning of COVID. They really needed a strategy that was adaptable and going to get them not just through COVID, but really much more stable once they got out of COVID. So we started with that. Then we did governance assessment and governance training. Then we did process improvement and we gave them 3 years worth of grants. They had a leader that was ready from the very beginning. And I knew it because I worked with him in the past. And I purposefully picked him because I knew he would be a pilot partner that would learn with us. And so we learned together how to do this capacity building work. He then went off to get a more advanced degree and sit on the Boise City Council so he could have a higher level of influence for the things he cared about, which is transportation, bicycle transportation in particular, in the community. The other one is Jesse Tree, Idaho. We also did a 3-year stint with them, and their leader we knew we really want to try to bet on good leaders. I mean, that's kind of the mantra is who are the good leaders out there, and let's put some bets on them. And she opened the door wide and let us in, and we did human centered design with their team to really look at how do we design the way people who are looking for housing need to get those resources. We did process improvement. I mean, we just did a host of different types of just in time projects to try to move them to the next level. She, at the end of what we were doing, rolled out on purpose because there was a artificial cap on her influence. So she started a new nonprofit that is a statewide organization to really look at this issue of housing from a development perspective. So instead of just from the citizen's perspective of I need to stay in my house, she said, you know what, there's a higher play here. And so she just established that. So I would those two are exemplars, but there are probably 200 other leaders in Idaho that if we surrounded them with the resources, the expertise and the implementation, automations, systems, we could really break through some of our biggest challenges here.
What are some of your biggest challenges there?
Well, right now it's keeping people from falling off the cliff in the areas of housing, food, childcare, medical, and behavioral. So right now, Idaho, our ALICE population, and that's an acronym for Asset Limited Income Constricted Employed. These are the working poor. They're working 2 and 3 jobs just trying to keep a roof over their family's head.
Yeah.
That number is growing in Idaho because of all the forcing functions outside, federally, worldwide, tariffs, all of those things are all coming in right now and people are squeezed. And so we have got to help people stay housed, stay fed, have safe, affordable childcare, get the medical help they need and the mental health they need. So those are the ones we're really focused in on right now to try to help. And we actually just launched something last week called Our Idaho Neighbor to Neighbor. And we know our government's not going to bail us out. They're just not going to do it. And so historically and today, especially in rural communities, when something happens to someone in your community, people show up and they help. It's the barn building concept. It's something happens and the community rallies. We need that again. But in order for that to happen, we're going to have leaders that we trust. And so this is another part of what is the big gap in our world right now is there's an erosion of public trust. So people don't know who to trust. And so it has to be as proximate to them as possible, the leaders in their own community who are saying, we can do this together and we're going to do this together. And we're going to own the 1 mile around our business, our church, our school, and our home.
Wow. I think the readiness aspect that you mentioned is very interesting because to me I equate it to on the enterprise side something like Shark Tank, right? The sharks
Mhm.
ask the question, if you had this investment, what are you going to do? And they're very keen on the answer because you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan that's going to prove that return on that investment, and it's got to be airtight, right?
Mhm.
We got to run a challenge with NIH called Community Champions for Disability Health. And it was somewhat similar because the first phase was this open call to 501c3 nonprofits around the country for tell us about something that you're doing for disabled populations in your community. And if you had a certain amount of money from the NIH and 12 months of time, what you would do to expand or amplify that great work that you're doing. And so the 8 teams that made it to phase 2 demonstrated this already impact that they were having, but then also demonstrated that readiness, right?
Mm.
And they were,
Mhm.
and so one of the finalists at the end of phase 2, the winners, a gentleman in New Orleans who had suffered a traumatic injury to his spinal cord many years ago and started a fitness facility and then was able to expand his fitness facility. It was called Split Second Foundation was the name of the organization, and then was able to expand it with courses and things for people in similar positions. And the, you know, the doors it opened for him, I mean, he had people write to him. I think he had a woman from Atlanta who had said, I was originally from New Orleans. I was living in Atlanta. This happened to me. I moved back to New Orleans because of your organization and what it
Mm.
offers. And having that support in my community, I think it's such a powerful thing, but it's a trickle effect from that readiness, right? To be able to jump into action when that opportunity comes.
Yeah, most nonprofit, especially those that, like I said, that are ecosystem leaders, they would love to have somebody ask them that question. Like I said, the risk averse sector, it really is. But if they were provided the space and the resources to think big, what's possible, they could. I'm serious. I would put big bets on some of our leaders here because they could come up with those things that could help solve some of our biggest issues. But they don't even dare think like that because they're just trying to keep the doors open and the programs and services available.
Interesting. That is
Yeah.
interesting. So what is on the horizon for Idaho Partners for Good? What types of things do you have coming down the pike?
Well, so we just launched our Idaho Neighbor to Neighbor, and it's really around 4 things. We've got to make things visible. So if you don't know, then you can't respond. So most people don't understand that more than 4 out of 10 of their neighbors are in a really tight spot. And so we've got to make that visible. Then we've got to mobilize people. And we have 3 grounding guiding principles under which we know, and we've vetted these with focus groups. We know people in Idaho will do 3 things. We know they will share in the care and capacity building. We know that we are all rooted in Idaho and that we can grow together. This is a big schism right now is the newbies coming into our state, taking over our political system. And so what those of us who have been in Idaho for a long time realize, well, then what are we doing to get them rooted in Idaho and understanding how we operate? And then the third thing is really let's not lose sight of prevention because it protects the people and our environment. So those are, we believe pretty much every Idahoan can come under, see themselves uniting under that umbrella. And then the pillars are make it visible, mobilize, work together, which is this notion of cross sector. So that is a huge, huge gap in almost every place on earth is this effective cross sector collaboration, but it is so necessary in order for us to truly be able to keep families and people off the cliff, so to speak. And then the last one is this strengthening the safety net that I referred to. What other business models are there that we could adopt or test to see if that might be a better way, more effective, more efficient, more productive way to actually move the services and deliver the delivery of services and programs across our state? That's really my full plate right now is getting the word out about this neighbor to neighbor thing that we've got to adopt together again.
Well, we will certainly do what we can to help with that and get the
Thank
word
you.
out. And we will put the link to that new program. Anything else? Any other ways that folks can learn more and get involved?
Absolutely. We love to deploy experts. So if you have an expertise, and think in these terms, experts as in I could teach it. That's how we that's the definition for us, is if you could teach this subject that you do, like automations or finances or training for HR, whatever. If you've got expertise, we'll use you. We'll deploy you in order to help more and more nonprofits get stronger, healthier, and better equipped so they can do more of what they do best.
Nice. That sounds great.
Hmm.
We have one question that we like to ask all of our guests. One problem you could solve using a challenge, because we love challenges, we love crowdsourcing. So if you had one that you could put forward to your community, one thing where you need the best idea out there for some hard problem to tackle. If you could run a challenge, what would it be?
I alluded to it because I'm not sure anybody has cracked the code at this point in time about the erosion of public trust. Our city, state, federal, every level is dealing with the broken promises. How do you begin at a scalable place to rebuild the trust between people, between their leaders, leader to leader? This is I think one of those challenges that is indicative of our times, and that we need some of the biggest brains to be able to solve it from the grassroots level all the way up. And it has to be synced. It can't be one off, siloed things. We're good at silos. But if we could come up with the answer for this challenge that begins at the personal level and goes all the way up, I would love the answer to that.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Well, Blossom, thank you so much for your time. This has been delightful. I love getting to talk to you. I love the work that you're doing. I think it's so vital and important. And hope to hope to talk again and look forward to hearing about your progress.
So, Jamie, I want to end with kulia ikanu'u, which means strive for the summit. You are on the tip of the spear. And so that is something that we need you to be doing so that others can follow.
That's great. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I'll end with that. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Blossom.